Hey honeys, welcome back to the pod with your host Heather Donovan here. And first off, I just cannot even begin to express enough gratitude for all the support that I have been receiving for the pod. I never thought that there would be as nearly as many downloads for my first episode than I have received. My first episode last week was downloaded about 50 times. I'm not really sure of the exact number. I didn't get a chance to look before this. And I'm a little overwhelmed by all the love and support that I have been getting. I truly didn't think that I'd have that much support, especially for my first episode, so thank you all very much. A few fun facts about the first episode. The random burp in the middle of the first episode was supposed to be edited out completely, but every time I went to go edit it out, it just didn't feel right to do so. Also, it made me laugh every time that I've heard it. I thought to myself, what is more of a question mark thing to do but to leave it in? So I unapologetically did so, and you're very welcome for that. Another thing that I just wanted to bring up about the first episode is that I just want to make one small correction. Because this part in the episode was edited out in a way that a part just got cut out. So I'm just going to take a quick second to correct it. The part where I was talking about my eating disorder, I meant to say that back in October of 2013, I was told that I've had 3 months left to live if I didn't make the necessary changes that needed to be made and would not live to see my 20th birthday. So now that we've gone through some housekeeping, let's get into the episode. So originally, I've had something else completely planned for this episode. In fact, it was going to be a two-parter, so this episode and the next one. But when I picked it up and started working on it, I've just realized that the subject needs more time and I might need to work it out a teeny bit because I'm not sure completely what direction I want to go with it. So I've took about 15 minutes that day to come up with something else for this episode, and honestly, I wasn't planning on having a ranting episode so soon, but I am not here to disappoint. So in my introductory episode, I said that I wouldn't be going back to my substitute teaching job due to my discretion. I am ready to be open and honest about why. I will be leaving the name of the school district and people for their own privacy. Back in October of 2022, I became a substitute teacher for middle and high schoolers. Both were located in the same building, just two different parts of the building. About a month into working there, I've noticed many issues. And one thing to know about me is that if something ain't right, then I sure am going to say something about it. And I'm about to list off a majority of the issues that I've had to deal with in my job in no particular order. Just the order that makes sense. Kind of. You'll get it. I could not pee when I really needed to the point where I was hurting. I once asked a TA that was in the room, for the class, to cover for me for 2 minutes when the class was being really good because I would not leave them if they were having a behavior or something. This TA said no. I was told that I was only entitled to a 20-minute break per day and that I've had to cover another class if asked to that didn't have a sub. So 20 minutes to eat, lunch, and pee for the whole day. What was I doing last month or so before I left? I ran into the bathroom and back in between class periods when classes were switching, which made students wonder where their teacher was. Real cute, ain't it? They didn't want me to have more than 10 minutes overtime per week, even if I was writing up notes for a teacher, especially if there was a behavior or something happened that the teacher had to know about. When at the same time they wanted me to be in the building for 7:30 a.m., but to not punch in until 7:45 a.m. They just wanted me to stand around and talk to the other subs and staff members, which I have had absolutely no interest in doing so because a lot of them were just a bunch of negative Nellies. It's pretty bad that when I would rather talk to the students instead of other staff members for this reason. I like to go in early in the morning to check to see if there were any class rosters and plans for the day, which there has been many times where there were none left, or email to anyone, so I had to make sign-in sheets and just tell them to go check Google Classroom, and yeah, it's been a real cute situation. If there was any lesson plans, I would write everything that was to be worked on and expected for them for the day on the whiteboard, if there was even a whiteboard in the room to write in. Teachers were getting paid $22 extra an hour if they covered a classroom that was without a substitute during their prep periods. Substitutes were not given any extra. Instead, if we were told to cover another classroom without a substitute during our prep periods, then we had to do it. I was being paid $15 per hour for substitute teaching. They've just bumped it up to $16.50 per hour for the next school year. But honestly, they could just wipe their butts with it, after all that they've put me through. And I'm not even done yet. Some teachers are way too flexible on their classroom rules and make their students think and feel like they didn't have to listen to any subs. And honestly, the school did nothing about behaviors, period, so it didn't really matter how much I spoke about bad behavior. Nothing was just going to change. Some teachers had too flexible of a schedule when it came to when a student's work was due. I knew one teacher that didn't care when any of their students' work was done and was turned in, as long as it was turned in before last day of school. Of course, none of the students did anything when they were out. I mean, why would they? I mean, I get that. Another teacher would have their classes play a prodigy game every single day, sub or no sub. The students were so bored of it, and of course they've had behaviors because they were bored, which of course I do get. Another thing that they would do and try to keep doing even after I called them out on it is that they've tried switching my job before the day even started or even midday. How my old substitute teaching gig worked for this particular school district is that there was an app for both teachers and substitutes to use. A teacher would put in for the time off through the app, whether it was for a few hours, a half a day, a full day, or even multiple days. And us subs could either take the job or reject the job. Nobody wanted to sub for the middle school, and only 2 of the 4 of us were willing to go down and sub for them. I've had my job switched 2 times before I finally went off one day at the beginning of March because they were doing it again for the 3rd time. I had a high school job that day, and they told me that they were switching me to middle school halfway through the day. I really let them have it that day. That's also the day I was informed that I was disposable. Yeah, even though they had like 4 substitutes, including me, for both those schools. But that was disposable. Okay. They were after me from that day on. It was already a hostile work environment before all this happened, but it got worse after that day. I dreaded going in every single day. They were mostly after me because I will speak up on just about anything that isn't right and will tell you about it, and I will do it with receipts. About 2 days later, I got complaints about my own personal TikTok. They said that they were inappropriate. Here's the thing though, they really weren't. They claimed that I swore in a particular TikTok, but it wasn't even my voice. It was one of those sounds, that you use in a TikTok video. I mean, I'm sure you TikTok people get it. I don't have to explain it to you guys. Here's something funny about this though. I've gotten slammed for this, but another sub used a sound on her own personal TikTok, and nothing was done about it. I found out about this from an 8th grader. They've shown me this TikTok themselves. So funny how that works, ain't it? Just saying. They also try to tell me I was posting about tailgates and stuff, but here's the funny thing about me. I pretty much don't do a lot. I go to work, do what I gotta do, and then go to dance, and then I'm home reading a book, watching TV, whatever, doing whatever I gotta do. So, I mean, it's funny that they even brought that up. And I know which one they're talking about. I think they're talking about the one where I went to see Trailer Trash Tammy. Which is like, okay, that's not in the the same exact thing as, what is it called? Tailgating. But okay, you think what you want. I also didn't like how I've made TikToks on my break sometimes. There were absolutely no students in the classroom. And I was also very careful about having any pictures and names of the students in the background that the staff members, the teachers I was covering for, were having it hanging up in the background. I was always very careful of that. But it's okay for other members of like the staff to be posting pictures of students on their own personal social medias without the parents' permission. I love that. I've started looking for another job after these events transpired, and I was having zero luck finding one. So I was planning on staying up until the very end of the year, which I was still looking for jobs and stuff, but I mean, that was the plan anyway, while I was still looking and interviewing and all that stuff. Until the day of the injury. So on this day, I was substitute high school class, but was told to cover 2 middle school classes that day that were gym classes. I only agreed to it because I knew that I've only had a few more weeks left and then I was done with the job completely anyways. The first middle gym class was great. But the second one was absolutely awful. They were kicking the basketballs like deranged animals. They were kicking them so hard. That it took a poster off the wall and it was hitting the hanging lights that are on a very high ceiling. Which I don't even understand how they were able to kick them up that high. I told them to knock it off many different times, but they refused to listen. Then towards the last 10 minutes of covering the class, a basketball hit a wall and hit me hard on the head. The way it hit me was straight on my head, and my head went down and compressed. It triggered an old work injury that was corrected. Back in February of 2020, I worked in a factory. I was working with an unguarded machine that took my nitrile glove and pulled me in and yanked me down. Doctor said that my injury was equivalent to one being injured in a car accident. And here's the funny part about this thing. A disciplinary person came in 5 minutes before the injury happened, and I told her about the concern with the basketballs and stuff, but she was more concerned about the students sitting on top of the mats. And she took those students out that were sitting on top of the mat. So go figure that out. This whole entire thing could have been prevented if she took better action. Anyways, let's see. Where was I? Oh, found it. I had to go to urgent care that night. They sent me home with the prescriptions that I had to pay for out of pocket because the workers' comp wasn't processed yet at the time. Because, of course, it just happened that day, so you gotta give it a little time to go through a system and all. I've also had to miss 8 days of work because of all the medication that I was put on, like muscle relaxers. The last time I was on muscle relaxers, and I told the doctor this too, so that's why he took me out for the extra days, was I get very drowsy and tired off of them. And of course that's safe to be at risk of falling asleep when you're watching students, period. So I just couldn't go. They did not want to compensate me for missed time or the prescriptions until I threatened to get my lawyer involved, who was on standby. The part about all this is that I am not leaving the school district because of students. I'm leaving because of the school district. I really cared and still care about my students, and I always will. They will always be my students, even though some of them have had some very ridiculous times. What the school district has done, leading me to make this decision, will not affect me or them at all. It's just hurting these students in the end. Because I was one of their favorite substitute teachers. They felt like they could relate with me, and they came to me with problems. They talked to me about personal issues, and it's just going to affect them in the long run. Long run, that really makes. Many students have asked me if I am coming back next year. And when I tell them the honest truth that I will not be, they become so crestfallen, and it absolutely breaks my heart every single time. The thing also that I keep in mind is if they aren't going to listen to their own teachers, then they definitely aren't going to listen to their substitute teachers. I have also talked to many teachers in the school district, and they are all having, sadly, the same issues as I am, and we're all in the same boat. Honestly, the only way I would go back is if major changes happened and if higher pay benefits were available. It's pretty sad that I am more excited to work at a travel center than a substitute teacher. So that's the story of why I will not be going back to substitute teaching. That will be it for this week's episode. Don't forget to follow the podcast's TikTok and Instagram at Life as a Question Mark. DM the podcast Instagram if you DM the pod Instagram if you'd like me to talk about something on the pod in the future. You can also follow my personal TikTok and Instagram at Miss D's World 22. And remember, if something ain't going right and you aren't being treated fairly, then it's always okay to walk away from it and re-navigate your life. After all, we only have the one life that we know of right now.